Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com. And you are, if you are listening, one of the Reprehensibles. Shame on you. So as you probably heard, Dr. Jordan Peterson finally became aware of a certain book called Jordanetics. Audio is good. Always glad to hear that. So welcome. Nice to see you all. I'm still figuring out this XSplit software. And so just trying to get used to how it works. So we've got the chat working in the stream now. And so one step at a time. We still don't have the YouTube count working. So I have no idea how many people are showing up, but that's cool. No problem. I actually had a really good day today. As you know, I am pretty heavily involved in European football, soccer, as we call it in the States. And a friend of mine recently got promoted to being a top-level professional referee. And so he invited me to come to a game that he was refereeing, and it was really fun to get to see him in action. It's a guy I know pretty well. We used to play against each other for about 4 years, and then he ended up joining the same gym that I belong to. So we hang out and we chat every so often, and so he was pretty stoked when he got promoted to La Liga, and it was really cool to go to the big stadium, see him leading out the other referees, and so that was pretty cool. So anyhow, it was a good day, but my son and I were cracking up that because he gave out so many cards. It was funny. So you probably saw the title. I was vastly amused to see that Jordan Peterson finally dared a book had been written about him. And the thing is, I had absolutely no doubt whatsoever that he was going to know about it. He knew about it the day after it was released. Jordan Peterson is a narcissist, and narcissists can't help paying attention to anything that refers to them in any way, shape, or form. These are the kind of people who actually Google themselves and go onto Twitter to see what people are saying about them. I learned a long time ago never to do that, because the more well-known you become, the more people talk about you, the more that it creates this vicious circle of action and reaction. And so, the best thing to do is just to pay no attention. Yeah, the bears are in the house. The big bear is in the house. Good to see you, man. And the thing that you need to understand is that people are always going to say negative things about you if you are in any way well known for anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, people talked smack about Mother Teresa. Here's a woman who didn't do anything but dedicate her life to helping feed poor people in India. And she still ended up coming under attack just because she became famous. And so no matter what you do, whether you're a good person, whether you're not a good person, you're going to come under an amount of attack. And the best thing to do is just ignore it. You know, I mean, I appreciate it when people bring certain things to my attention. You know, like for example, I don't pay that much attention, to be honest. In the past few weeks, maybe month, I've paid no attention whatsoever to Jordan Peterson. I wouldn't have known about this if somebody hadn't let me know. But, so I'm glad that they did. I am. But, you know, I don't need to know, and I don't care, you know, that JF is still spurging about the fact that I called him out on his innumeracy and his moral degeneracy. You know, I don't care what he says. He knows nothing about me. He doesn't even have the capability of understanding most of what I'm talking about. So whatever he says is not relevant. I don't need to know. I don't. But that is a normal, mentally healthy person with a reasonable ego. You know, I have a large ego. I'm arrogant, but I'm not narcissistic. Somebody who's narcissistic is consumed by themselves. They're constantly trying to monitor what other people are saying about them and what people are thinking about them. The reason is that they're always trying to manage everybody else's perceptions. And you can often spot these narcissists just by watching how they interact in public. What they're doing all the time is they're constantly studying other people, especially when those people aren't looking. And so, and they really don't like it when you catch them doing that. That can be bad if they're the malignant narcissistic type. But anyhow, this is what happened. This is what was amusing. I am going to play it for you now. Let me put this on so I can hear it as well. So without further ado, I'm going to fire this up. Okay, well, I thought that was going to play. Let's see.
Well, it seems hilarious. You kind of get, your celebrity gets co-opted from people on all sorts of parts of the political spectrum and extremes of the political spectrum, doesn't it?
Well, I think there's some of that. I don't know if it gets co-opted too much on the radical left, let's say, although I certainly face the majority of my opposition from the radical left. But the radical right types are not very fond of me either. There was a new book written called Dianetics by a rather reprehensible individual named Vox Day. And if you want to find out what the ethno-nationalists think about me, that's a pretty good read. I wouldn't call it precisely complimentary.
Look,
it's a pretty good read.
So that was pretty amusing. Of course, this is the book they're talking about, Jordanetics. If you're interested in it, you can pick it up. It's not called Dianetics. Dianetics was the original fake religion created by L. Ron Hubbard. Jordanetics is the fake religion that Jordan Peterson is in the process of trying to create. And so some people were saying, oh, well, he was lying about the title. And maybe, I mean, I have no idea. I don't pretend to be able to read his mind. But what cracks me up is that I like to think that it was a Freudian slip, that he meant to say Jordanetics, but it came out as Dianetics. The interesting thing, let me show you this here. Look at the title very closely. Do you see where it says, Jordanetics? You see how there's that sort of white, almost sunrise appearance? And we did the same effect on the back. I love this quote of Jordan Peterson's. Falsehoods have consequences. That's what makes them false. And we actually did that intentionally because we wanted to evoke. If you look at the cover of Dianetics, we actually wanted to evoke that. Truck My Hat says, the 2 chat streams are dope. You tech whiz. What 2 streams? I have no idea what you're talking about. But what's funny, though, is that I was just talking to our production editor, and we're actually going to move Forward by Milo Yiannopoulos down. We'll probably put it around here somewhere. And then up here, we're going to put a nice big quote saying, a pretty good read, Dr. Jordan Peterson. So anyhow, it's fun to have a publishing house because you can do things like that. So anyhow, the other interesting thing about this is that Peterson did exactly what I said he does in the book. He talks about ethno-nationalists. Ethno-nationalism is redundant. There's no such thing as ethno-nationalism. There is only nationalism. Nationalism derives from the verb nati. In Italian, when you say dove nato, it means where were you born? I was born in Boston, sono nato di Boston. And so nato is about those who are related by birth, those who are related by blood, those who are of the same ethnicity. And so ethno-nationalist means NATO nationalist. It means national nationalist. It's redundant. And so, see, this is funny. Lewis Hopgood says, you are positively glowing for being noticed by Jordan. Congratulations, sir. You only had to be obsessed enough to write a book about him. See, the funny thing is, last night the narrative was that I would be crushed by the fact that I had been dismissed and called reprehensible. And now it's, because you're amused by this, then it's proof that you're obsessed. Let me be very straight. I don't care at all about Jordan Peterson in and of himself. He's mentally ill, he is going to hell, and he is an extremely evil man. He is dedicated to globalism, he's dedicated to the end of Western civilization, and he's dedicated to the destruction of the United States of America. I'm not obsessed by him. I despise him. I think that he is a disgusting intellectual charlatan, and I have unmitigated intellectual contempt for him, as you will understand if you read Jordanetics. Also, I'm happy to be able to say, if you pick up the audiobook, it's just fallen out of Kindle Unlimited. It finally expired from Kindle Select, which means that we're now able to sell the ebook directly on the Archaven store, which means that we can include it for free with the audiobook. So if you're interested, the link is below the video. You can pick up, I think it's 7 hours and something minutes. But you can pick up the audiobook, and the ebook is included in both EPUB and Kindle formats. So Duralex Sedlex says, everything has fallen into place 2.0. We've got old school ilk around. So what's interesting, though, is that he referred to me as being reprehensible. On what basis? On what basis? He might not like me, he might disagree with me, but reprehensible? That's a pretty fascinating view for somebody who doesn't appear to know much about me. And it's interesting because there's no there. It's just pure rhetoric. I can tell you why I think Jordan Peterson is mentally ill. He's mentally ill because he's on drugs. He's been prescribed drugs in order to treat his mental illness. I can tell you why I think he's evil. Because he is teaching a philosophy that is based, at least in part, on combinations of Nietzsche, Crowley, and other occultists. I can say very clearly why I believe he's anti-Christian, because he has never confessed with his tongue or believed with his heart, to the best of our knowledge, that Jesus Christ is Lord. I can give you reasons for all of those things. I substantiate those reasons in Jordanetics. On what basis does he call me reprehensible? We don't know. It's just rhetoric. And the reason that he did this, somebody said, well, why would he do this? You haven't even been paying attention to it. But the information in the book is now circulating actively among his followers. He knows this, and he's trying to figure out a way to stop it without having to confront it directly. He doesn't want to confront it directly because he can't confront it directly. I'm going to read you the total inability of Jordan Peterson's fans to even address directly the issues that are raised in that book. The James Fox Higgins show says, in Australia, we used to say, what's your nasho, mate? But now that's a racist question if you're right. Exactly. What's your nationality? Enrique Lau says, screw JP, men like you and BB, that would be Owen Benjamin, the big bear, brought me closer to Christ. JP elaborates on biblical lectures, but does nothing except spread stupid traditions of men, lies, and confusion. I watched part of his biblical lecture that Owen had on his stream about 2 months ago. And it was really remarkable for the fact that it had almost nothing at all to do with the Bible. Jordan Peterson doesn't know much about the Bible. He started talking about the Bible before he'd even finished reading it. He started teaching about the Bible before he started teaching it. And so it's just ludicrous. I mean, Peterson, and I'm going to get into this at some point in time to explain just how evil his attack on family and identity is. But, we'll save that for another time because I want to, go deep on that one. But here, listen to some of these reviews. These are recent reviews. These are the most recent reviews from the 1-star reviews on Amazon about the book Jordanetics. Vox Day is a moron. Vox Day is a bigoted right-wing conspiracy theorist who essentially thinks Peterson is not right-wing enough, not Christian enough, and not racist enough. This book is an exercise in ironic lack of self-awareness. An anti-intellectual charlatan accuses a legitimate thinker of being an anti-intellectual charlatan. Good for a laugh, I suppose. What you'll see in these reviews is just nothing but rhetoric, nothing but disqualification. Misrepresentations. The author is misinformed, has gross misrepresentations. Using his own assumption premise, one can only assume that are just downright lies in order to sell a book. What we also see is that most of these people are relatively low IQ. I mean, we're talking in the 95 to 105 IQ range. They use these words that are not even particularly big words, but they don't know how to use them properly. Nothing more than a personal vendetta for perceived slights. The only refreshing aspect of the book was that it was criticism from the radical right rather than the usual radical left. It's not a personal vendetta. And for perceived slights, Peterson had no idea who I was when I wrote the book. It's ridiculous. Parasitical fraud. The attacks are fundamentally based on Dr. Peterson's unwillingness to participate in identity politics and therefore platform a racial agenda on the back of his own professional reputation. I'm not going to spend real money reading a guy tearing down a respectable academic's career. This is a hit piece. Right in the review. right in the review. He says he doesn't read it. The James Fox Higgins show says, I'd like to see such critiques of you from JBP and his devotees in E-prime language. Good luck, buckos. I would too. That would be amusing. Anti-Semitic at best and a true rally for atheists. This should be taken off of Amazon. Vox Day is as alt-right as you can get. I find it amusing that, number one, they think Peterson's a Christian, and number two, they think I'm an atheist, or that my attack on Peterson is because I'm yeah. A bunch of fake news. I mean reviews. How many of these reviews are from people who aren't Vox Day cultists or other writers associated with him who help each other out by giving good reviews? It's all so phony. See, what drives them crazy is the fact that the book has something like 80 5-star reviews, many of which are long, detailed reviews that actually address the content of the book itself. And so, somebody said my microphone's fine. Whatever the issue is, it's not my mic. Rubbish book. Unreliable and basically a vendetta. This rambling and jealous attempted takedown of one of the greatest thinkers of our time, I can't believe they actually said that, is a waste of money. Vox's incoherent writings, copy-pasting YouTube transcripts, and misquoting of JP's books talks are just part of the problem. Just to be clear, there is no misquoting whatsoever. Every single quote is precisely 100% accurate. As much as I am conservative and would rather like-minded individuals band together than take each other down, given the power of the left, I'll call out rubbish when I see it. Using Milo for the forward, seriously? The bloke is merely jealous and his own career is sadly falling apart. I do like Milo, but Vox, like Milo, appear to come across as having some personal vendetta. Notice the theme again. That's all this is. Unfortunately, yes, JP's made mistakes. We all do, but they're not worth crucifying him for. Again, focusing on the personal stuff, focusing on the jealousy stuff. And so, okay, let's see. Someone said there might be some notification issues, so I'm going to make sure that Skype is shut down. I don't think that's the issue, but you never know. There. Then, let's see. Oh, actually, I wonder if I can turn this off. Let me know. All right, there we go. I just turned it off. Let me know when it's back on. Let me know when it's back. There it is. Okay, good. So now let's look at the real reviews, the actual reviews. Great takedown of a charlatan. Peterson sounds all right at first, but he will teach you to be weak, deceitful, and compliant. Vox Day explains in impressive detail, an important case well made. So they're actually talking about the book. They're not talking about me. They're talking about what's actually going on in the book. Another one says, this one is really good because it actually refers to what's going on with the reviews. Systematic breakdown of Peterson's core ideas and assessment of his character. Notice how the one-star reviewers are claiming jealousy on Vox Day's part in order to dismiss his systematic breakdown of Peterson instead of pointing out any factual errors. Exactly. They don't point out any errors whatsoever because they aren't errors. They aren't there. They behave exactly like the very SJWs they criticize, who bring emotional accusations to logical conversations. If you pay attention, reviews by verified purchases are almost unanimously 5-star, while the vast majority of bad reviews, which are significantly outnumbered by them, are by people who haven't bought Jordanetics, much less read it. You can't review something you've never read because that's not what the word review means. But Peterson himself could very well argue, well, it depends on what you mean by review, eh? So maybe this is the Petersonian tactic of redefining commonly used words to make a ludicrous position seem reasonable, which Vox Day exposes beautifully in Jordanetics. And then he talks specifically about the book. Vox Day's critiques of Peterson and Jordanetics are extremely methodical and clear, and peppered with a healthy dose of humor. He uses Peterson's own words as the basis of his attack, analyzes the very sources that Peterson himself cites as the foundation for his claims, then shows you step by step how Peterson has twisted the original meaning of his sources to fit narratives that are wildly inconsistent with the sources themselves. And that's just scratching the surface of what Vox Day breaks down throughout the book. Anyone who says Vox is making anything other than a clear, logic-based attack on Peterson doesn't see the obvious irony that Vox's language and method is far more clear and concise than Peterson's ambiguous and foggy ramblings. Now that is not just a positive review of the book. That is a review that actually talks about what the book is. And that's what a book review is supposed to do. David Porter says, did you write that? No, I didn't write that. Yeah, I mean, just so you understand, I was the only professional game developer who was allowed to review computer games for Computer Gaming World, despite their policy against that, because the editors had sufficient trust in my integrity to know that I would never, ever modify my review of someone else's game just because it happened to compete with mine. I am not going to write reviews of my own books. That's just flat out never, ever going to happen. So the thing is that unless and until you read Jordanetics, you're not going to fully understand what Jordan Peterson is about. You're not going to understand the depths to which he has delved into the occult. You're not going to understand how the philosophy that he is teaching is fundamentally and intrinsically evil. Not just, oh, but it does good things for people. It's not going to do good things for anyone. Even if you think it's doing something good for you, it's not. What Peterson is doing is he is giving people who are failures a philosophy that allows them to feel content and satisfied with failure. And he's doing so because he believes in preventing war by destroying nations. His whole goal is to prevent war. Remember, he's mentally ill. Is totally obsessed and is totally afraid of catastrophe. He's totally afraid of war and other tribulations of the sort that are coming. We publish There Will Be War. And Dr. Jerry Pournelle, the late, great Dr. Jerry Pournelle, was right. There is going to be war. The diversity wars of the 2030s, we hope, are going to be some of the worst wars in human history. We're talking about the kind of wars that haven't been seen since World War II, since the 30 Years' War. It's going to be really bad. And so it's just something that we're going to have to deal with. Humanity has gone through a long period of peace, but that period is running out. So I'm far from the only person who sees this. I'm far from the only person who understands this. Many military historians know. Other people, socionomists like Bob Prechter, know. And that's what's coming. And so Peterson lives a philosophy of fear and suffering. And he's terrified by this. And so he's desperate to try to come up with a way to prevent it. But as people often do, they turn to the very things that, they help create the very things that they fear. Now, these things are coming whether Jordan Peterson ever opened his mouth in public or not. It has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with me. It doesn't even have anything to do with like the George Soroses and stuff. The Soroses and Petersons make it worse, but the historical trends, the great historical trends, are inevitable. And, but you have to understand that that's what Peterson's trying to prevent. And that's why he's always weeping and he's a wreck. That's what terrifies him. That's what gives him nightmares. And so he's desperately trying to stop what he sees as the end of the world. But it's not the end of the world. Even another Dark Ages, to the extent that there ever was such a thing, is not the end of the world. War and tragedy and human suffering are part of human existence. They're the unpleasant parts, but that's the price that you have to pay for the lunacy of the last 60 years. The James Higgin Fox show is on fire. He says, I'm reading and analyzing Jordanetics on a weekly live stream on my channel and comparing to JBP's book. I used to see JBP as my internet dad. Now I see him as my weak, weird, and unstable internet uncle. Well, email me the link to that. I'd love to send some folks your way, especially those who are less inclined to reading. They might find that very useful. They might find those comparisons very useful. And I think that you've probably seen, because you're analyzing it and comparing it to 12 Rules for Life, you can see that everything is taken directly out of there or out of Maps of Meaning. It's not my imagination. Let's see. Apparently I missed a super chat here. I'm going to look for it. Muffhead sent it. I can't find it there. I'm going to find it over here. Just a moment, please. Like I said, I'm still kind of getting used to this whole new system with XSplit. Muffhead says, hello, Vox. It seems like being a true nationalist requires being in favor of repatriation, a truly messy potentiality. Well, yes. Not all nations require that. There's plenty of nations that haven't allowed themselves to be invaded and set up these major fault lines for conflict. But yeah, most of the nations that have done so are facing the long-term choice between mass repatriations and civil war. And that's a tragedy. That's it's one of the biggest tragedies in human existence, I believe. So, the open borders crowd is going to have an amazing culpability for a tremendous amount of human tragedy. Vox, how can England fix its problems? What would you do if you were a Brit? Well, the first thing that I would do is no deal Brexit. That's a great first step. The second thing that I would do is completely shut down all immigration. And the third thing that I would start doing is start the mass repatriations. So, here's what you have to understand, and I've pointed this out many times, and I've quoted the great Israeli military historian Martin Van Creveld many times, is immigration and war are two sides of the same coin. War tends to follow mass migration, which tends to follow war again. And so if you look at history, if you look at the history of the movement of peoples, look it up on Infogalactic. Or if you think that's too biased, look it up on Wikipedia. The mass historical movement of peoples is associated with a mass war constantly. And the United States is now the recipient of the largest movement of peoples in human history. Europe is the recipient of one of the largest internal movements in human history, plus a series of external invasions. Okay? That war is coming on that basis. Because at the end of the day, people from different cultures with different traditions want to live differently. And there can only be one master. Muffhead said, a wonderful YouTuber rocking Mr. E said he came back to Christ because of you. That's good to hear. He said, your tip on a Darkstream about praying for faith if you have none worked and switch something on for him. I asked the same, waiting. Good for you. And stick to it. Because you never know when the answer to your prayer is going to come. A lot of you have been following along with the saga of Space Bunny's dog. And, he's not out of the woods yet, but he is doing much, much better. He's gained something like 8 kilos or something. He's no longer looks like a victim of the dog accost. And it was to the point, I thought we were 12 hours away from having to call the vet. It was to the point where, the kids were canceling things that they were going to be doing that weekend because they wanted to be around. And then, suddenly he started eating a bit. And, you never know when your hope, when your faith is going to be rewarded. And so it's important to, as they say, keep the faith, even if you don't have it. Jackson Brown asks, hi Vox, may I ask you how being Christian in this world comforts or consoles you? I don't really think of it as being comforting or consoling. In fact, Christianity is the darkest perspective there is. It is the darkest human perspective there is. It is entirely based on the idea that all these conspiracies that we observe are not merely run by men, but are run by immortal, sociopathic, serial killers who hate you. It's a tremendously frightening, it's a tremendously dark perspective. But it's also the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing that matches the evidence that we observe. And what Christianity brings is it brings hope to that. Because Christianity also offers the only method of genuinely resisting that evil of a fallen world. So, you got to keep in mind, the only reason that Jesus Christ had to come is because evil rules the world. And so, it's a very, very different perspective than what they teach kids in Sunday school about he's got the whole world in his hands. Until you realize we're all living in a fantasy novel. Yeah. So anyhow, it's that's why I don't think comforting or consoling is really the right way to look at it. But it's about truth, and it's about hope, and it's about life. And so, so those are all good things. I'm not quite so optimistic, but JNYC says, I suspect the history books will reference people who made a difference for their people as listen to Vox Day. Look, there are so many people who are doing good things, so many people who are keeping the faith, who are praying to make a difference, who are standing up for the truth. There are many, many people doing that. You just don't see it because those aren't the kind of people that our society elevates. Those aren't the kind of people that our society rewards. Those aren't the kind of people that our society wants to give a voice. And so don't allow your perception to be molded by the false narrative of the fake news. Practically everything they say is a lie. America First said, I'd like somebody to articulate in their own words why they don't trust Jordan Peterson. Because by his own account, he is a habitual liar. He is a deceiver. He is a globalist who works for the UN. And he is dedicated to the destruction of the American identity. He is dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. If that's not enough reason for you to be opposed to him, now, Jordan Peterson is not educating an entire generation desperately needing the cautionary tale of communism. Communism is no longer a problem. Communism is dead, except for in China, where it is mutated into something that has virtually nothing to do with Marx or Lenin. Jordan Peterson is filling the role that Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris failed to do. They pushed the new atheism to try to destroy Christianity and spiritualism. But what they learned was that secular humanism doesn't offer people anything. So Jordan Peterson and Jordanetics have now been pushed in order to try to fill the gap, because they don't want people turning, especially young men, they don't want young men turning to nationalism, and they don't want young men turning to Christianity above all. The James Fox Higgins Show says the fastest way to get to my Jordanetics analysis is therationalrise.com/Jordanetics. So check that out if you want to see a comparison of Jordanetics to 12 Rules for Life. I have nothing to do with it. This is the first I've heard about it. So if you want to get a fair, unbiased, to the extent, I think, from what James said, to the extent that he had any bias, it was actually a pro-Peterson bias. So check out therationalrise.com/Jordanetics. Ben McKean says, it's amazing that when pointing this out, his lobsters get angry and deny these truths because they're deceived. Jordan Peterson is first and foremost a deceiver. Helberg EXE says, what was your faith like as a teen? I would say it was essentially non-existent. I was never an atheist, but I would say that I was a agnostic hedonist. I am not a Catholic. I'm a non-denominational Christian. Edward Lynn says, I just finished Ship of Fools by Christopher Hallpike Box. Thank you for recommending and selling that book. Ship of Fools is awesome. Ship of Fools should be read by everyone who has ever read Yuval Harari. because Hallpike demolishes some of Harari's assumptions, arguments, and conclusions. It's kind of interesting, too, because there's sort of a very Castalia element to it, because Harari actually studied under Martin van Creveld. In fact, Harari was the student that van Creveld considered to be one of his best students ever. He's a very, very smart guy. I just think he's fundamentally wrong about a lot of those things. I asked Peterson a question in his monthly chat, and he answered it. I asked about how to offset the Islamization of Europe, and he basically said that the Islamization was fake news. I told you, Jordan Peterson is a deceiver. Jordan Peterson is a habitual liar. Firefall down through 1,000 somethings into the chat and said, I find Romans 8:28 comforting. Once we are his children, God uses all things for our good, not necessarily our comfort, but our ability to enjoy him and truth. Have you ever read any Jonathan Edwards or John Piper Vox? Oh, I know all about John Piper. I haven't read any Jonathan Edwards. I am not at all a fan of John Piper. An old friend of mine who went to the same Baptist church that I did when we were kids and was in the same scout troop as I was when we were kids, he actually goes to Piper's church, and he's a pretty big fan. So there have been some heated discussions on the blog about Piper. Ben Darling says, amazing to think that the Vox we see in the Psychosonic videos is neither Christian nor alt-right. Well, I mean, I was always pretty radical right. Tony said, I said from the beginning that Jordan Peterson is a chaos magician. His own siglo is a chaos sign. Well, he's definitely a wizard. The Freedom Club says, I'm reading Harari now, and he makes a huge amount of assumptions about primitive human behavior. Yeah, and Hallpike is a anthropologist, and so who's actually lived with several primitive human tribes in Ethiopia and in New Guinea, and so he deals with those very, very effectively. Daniel Gillen says, why are you not Orthodox, original church? I don't even know how to begin answering that question. I'm not Orthodox. I've never even set foot in an Orthodox church. I know very little about the Orthodox church. So, King Green says, Psychosonic's first album is perfection. Vox, definitely be proud. I'll tell Paul that. Paul and I are actually going to we're getting together to talk on Monday about doing a little project together. So he'll be amused to hear that. Lewis Hopgood, do you believe that JBP has anything to offer male college students who feel dispossessed by the socialist cultures that demonize their inherent proclivities, or even those studying psychology? Well, he does have plenty to offer. The problem is that he's offering them poison. I mean, the fact that somebody is addressing something bad does not make what they're offering good. What he is offering could actually be worse than what they are dealing with now. You know, it's really, really bad. It's really negative. His philosophy is a philosophy of fear and suffering and submission. And it's a philosophy of mediocrity. And so it's not good for those guys. You know, is that better than going full SJW? I think they're both bad. Daniel Natal says, watch a video called Jordan Peterson Dismantled. They have him on video saying that he needs the white race asleep to be able to get them to sleepwalk into the United Nations. He openly says it. Yeah, I've been saying since fairly early on that Jordan Peterson is the voice of Soros. You know, he is being pushed by George Soros and Soros's allies because they want to turn the youth away from the nationalism and away from the Christianity to which they are turning as they reject atheism and SJWism. You know, Peterson is a gatekeeper. Shapiro is a gatekeeper. They're meant to keep people on the greater left liberal godless reservation. So, all right. Well, thanks very much for tuning in. I appreciate the fact that you took the time to listen to this. If you're interested in checking out Jordanetics, the links are below the video. We've got plenty of other books there too. We actually mentioned a few of them tonight. If you go to arkhavencomics.com, that's the store. And we will look forward to seeing you the next time. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.